Well, I'm going to do a little more experimenting today. Get everything set up here on the bench. Take the sling off this rifle so I don't interfere with my shooting rest. I just went out and set a target up 100 yards out there. So we'll do a little experiment today. You know, we can have any number of reasons for needing to shoot or wanting to shoot a little bit, but one of them is I just plain old enjoy shooting. I like shooting. I like occasionally taking out a rifle that you really like and just enjoy handling it and shooting it. And one such is my Remington 700. A Remington 700 ADL here, which is in 222. I've had that gun, what, 50 years maybe? Had it somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 years. And it's been a super accurate rifle. You shoot virtually anything you put in it. One of the few rifles I've ever seen that would do that. And I'd got to the point that I thought, man, it didn't matter what you shoot in it, what combination you put in it, it's going to shoot it well. But overall, I kind of settled on 4198, IMR 4198 being the overall best powder for it. And I've still got ammo loaded up from several years ago. Last prairie dog shoot I went on, and I've still got ammo loaded from that, quite a few rounds, matter of fact. And they are absolute tag drivers. It's one ragged hole, 100 yards. Well, I got out and I decided I'd do a little experiment here a while back, and lo and behold, I had 3 more canisters of IMR 4198. And the first canister that I picked up to reload wouldn't shoot it. Man, it didn't shoot worth a flip. I mean, it was terrible. The accuracy was all to pieces. Instead of being one hole, my God, they was shooting 2-inch groups. 1.5, 2-inch groups. Terrible, terrible. So then I opened up and loaded some more out of canister number 2 and canister number 3. Both of those shoot really well. Canister number 2, I think, probably shoots a little bit better than the number 3. But number 1 is out as far as this 222 is concerned. I mean, it's amazing how sometimes you can have a powder and you run out of a canister of it and you go get another one, it just don't shoot worth a flip. And that's what happened there. So, even though I have done a little bit of experimenting, and I can be perfectly content with the canister number 2 and 3, and that's that'll take me for a lot of shooting. A lot of shooting can come out of those 2 canisters. But so I should be happy with it. But I've been reading a lot and hearing a lot about this stuff. It's CFE 223. Gets a lot of good publicity, a lot of good press. So I decided I'd try it in this 222, and I'm going to try it in the 22-250. The other day I come out and I shot a few experimental loads, and it shot well. It shot real well. It was pretty much shooting right in there with the 4198, the number 2 and 3 canisters. It shooting real good. So I come out here and I've loaded up a few more. Hodgson CFE 223. And I've loaded them with some 50 grain Hornady SX bullets. Is what I normally shoot in this thing for prairie dogs and groundhogs and coyotes and things like that around here. And I usually shoot the Hornady 50 grain SX. So I've got a few more loaded with that. Also, I've got, since it performs velocity-wise so well, I decided to try the 55 grain, standard 55 grain Sierra 55 grain spire point. And I've got a few of those loaded, so I'm going to give both of them a whirl, and we're going to see exactly what they do. It had been a little breezy, and it's still some breeze blowing. It's not too terribly bad, but it can affect it, so I'll take any horizontal stringing with a grain of salt, and we'll see what happens. Right now, I'm going to get over here and get set up, fire a few rounds, and let's just see what happens. Well, first thing I'm going to shoot's the Hornady 50 grain SX. And actually I've got, the book listed is the maximum load. I've got 26.2 grains of CFE 223. So let's just see what they're going to do today. The other day when I shot anywhere from 25.7 grains up to 26 grains. They all shot good, but this is the first try with the maxed out loads. Well, that first hit right up there where I wanted. As far as zero is concerned, it's perfect. See what the accuracy is. First two look good. Let's see what this one does. We look through the spot scope. Yeah, stuff's shooting pretty good so far. Two of them's in the same hole. Two of them's in the same hole, and the other one's just barely out, almost touching. So far, I like this CFE 223. And this little 222, it's doing right well. I'm going to let that barrel cool off for a few minutes. All of the shots that I'm firing here today are with brass that's been fired in this gun and reloaded. Brand new brass that's never been fired is a little bit small for this chamber. Kind of an oddity on this particular rifle and its chamber and my reloading dice. Factory brass, when measuring from a point on the shoulder to get your overall length, it's about, 4 thousandths shorter than my chamber, which is kind of normal, you know. It's 4 thousandths shorter than my chamber. So after firing it, once fired brass, after it ejected, you know, you get it and you go back and you measure it, it's 4 thousandths longer than the factory stuff. And I normally like to set my shoulder back 2 thousandths of an inch. But this chamber in this rifle and my reloading dies are not, they're not within the same specs, let's put it that way. Because as I start resizing that die, or resizing that brass, and I'm doing it in stages, you know, resize a little bit and screw it down, resize a little bit and screw it on down. And as I measure that case from the shoulder back to the head on it gets longer. Every time I screw it down a bit, it gets a little longer. And that's because it's kind of like squeezing a banana, you know. You run that case up in the die and it's just squeezing it down. It's kind of pushing that shoulder forward. So the shoulder gets a little bit longer and a little bit longer and a little bit longer until I bottom it out. When the bottom of that die is bottomed out against the shell holder, that's as far as you can go, you know, as far as resizing it, and then that die's gone. It pushes the shoulder back again, okay? But instead of it pushing it back, which I would like to push it back 2 thousandths of an inch shorter than being an exact fit, instead, well, let's put it comes out 2 thousandths longer than when I take the brass, when I take this brass straight out of the rifle, and I measure from a point on the shoulder back to the head here, it's grown 4 thousandths of an inch from the factory brass. Yet when I full length resize it with my die all the way down, it comes out 2 thousandths of an inch longer than it does coming out of the gun. So basically what it boils down to is it's an exact fit. It's a little bit of a tight fit. You feel a little pressure when you put them in there. So by accident, I mean, I would like for it to be 2 thousandths shorter. Instead, it's an exact fit, which is all right for a varmint rifle, you know. I wouldn't want that for a big game rifle. I'd want for a chamber a little easier, so a little bit stiff chamber on a varmint rifle doesn't really matter if you're shooting prairie dogs or groundhogs or coyote or something. That don't really matter, but just kind of interesting that it's a certain length to begin with, and then when you fire it, it grows 4 thousandths of an inch, and as you start squeezing it down in that die, it just gets longer and longer and longer and longer until you bottom the die out, and then it sets that shoulder back. But it sets it back 2 thousandths of an inch longer than when it came out of the gun, rather than 2 thousandths of an inch shorter. That's just the way it is. Well, that barrel's cooled down enough. I reckon I'll go ahead and fire these other rounds. And like I said, that those last few rounds there, those last few rounds were the last few rounds were 26.2 grains of CFE 223 with a 50 grain Hornady SX bullet. Well, these are going to be 25.9 grains, which is a maximum load. 25.9 grains with 55 grain bullet. Let's see what that does. almost willing to bet you that it'll shoot pretty good. Let's look at the spot and scope. All right. I love shooting this little 222. That's a beauty. Those two just about the same hole. See what the third one does. Take a look. Oh my. Oh Lordy. After that cataract surgery, it's bright out here. Yeah. I've never been much of one for sunglasses, but after that cataract surgery, sunglasses become almost a necessity. Well, the last three are pretty much the same hole. This little gun is one accurate little rifle. It has been since the day I got it. It's a good little rifle. I really like this thing. Yeah, I barely do. But that 223, CFE 223, it seems to really like that stuff. So that's just 3 rounds with 2 different loads. So you got to do a little bit more experimenting than that, even in today's day when components are hard to come by. So I'm inexpensive. So I'm going to go back in the house, load up 3 more each, and come back out and shoot them in that same target. We're just going to see what the 6-shot group will look like. Fired 3, and then a spell, a time lapse in between it, then 3 more. Let's go see what they'll load up a few more and see what they do. Well, I went back in the house, loaded up a few more of each one of those 2 loads. And the first one I'm going to try is the last one that I shot, which is 55 grain Sierra bullet with 25.9 grains of CFE 223. We'll try that first, see how that does. See if this next 3 shoot anywhere near as good as that first 3 did. And it would be nice. We're going to find out. Okie doke. Well, it would help with the bolt. Easier to get one in. Bolt open. Okay. All right, boy. Let's see where you go. Oh my. Goodness. So far, you gotta love that. Come on, you stay in there right the rest of it. Man, you gotta love that. That's great. That's great. Now let's see what the 50 grain SX do with 62. I mean, shoot, 26.2 grains. Well, I gotta say I like both those, but the 55 grain actually shooting a little better than the 50 grain SX. So far, this CFE 223, I like it. It's kind of lived up to the hype it's got, at least as far as this rifle's concerned. Now, being an old line hunter, 80 years old, kind of set in my ways, you know, I've used the powders that I'm accustomed to over the years, but when something happens to one of them that don't shoot right, or you just decide to try some of these new powders, that's fine. But I've tried Superformance, big game, a couple of threes in your powders, and they haven't, in my guns, they haven't lived up to what the old powders did. But this CFE 223, it's pretty good. And I'm thinking what I'm going to do, if I was going to go back prairie dog hunting, I don't know if I ever will or not, but if I was going to go back prairie dog hunting, and I decided to use this CFE 223, it's a ball powder, and it's kind of has a little bit of a reputation of being heat sensitive or temperature sensitive. So if I decided to use it, I'd do just like I did my H414 loads and my 220 Swift and stuff that's also a ball powder, and it's definitely temperature sensitive, especially when you're shooting around here, shooting in the shade, and then you go out there in that open prairie country, and it's hotter than blue blazes. You know, the gun and the ammo gets hot, you can't hardly hold it. So I learned on my very first trip, boy, you had to do something to keep that ammo cool. You had to keep it shaded from the sun. So I started putting it in a styrofoam cooler and keeping it cool. Now, I didn't have ice in it or anything, but you just keep it out of that direct sun. Do all you can to keep that ammo cool. So my ammo storage, I'd take 1,500 rounds of ammo for various guns. I'd keep that out of the sun and in a cooler to maintain a coolness. When you pick that cartridge up, when you picked it up, it had a cool feel to it, just like it does here, not blistering hot. So anyway, if I was going to use that CFE 223 in a prairie dog load, I would definitely do all I could to keep it out of sun. But more than likely, if I went prairie dog hunting, I'd go back and I'd use the 4198 loads, which are nowhere near as heat sensitive as H414 was, and probably not as much as the CFE 223. Anyway, I've got 3 shells loaded up here. There's a little rock up there on the side of the hill, roughly about the size of a groundhog, a woodchuck. And I know with the 50 grain SX, I hit it every time. And the zero on these two are pretty doggone close at 100 yards. They look pretty much the same. So I'm going to set up. Let's see. And this is shooting more like under field conditions. I've got to hold the rifle, and I'm rested on my hand, and I'm holding gets my shoulder back here, and I'm actually holding the rifle, but I'm resting my hands on the rifle rest. So it's not dead nuts rock solid like it would be off the bench, but it's more like shooting hunting position. So I'm going to go ahead and try that rock time or two and see what happens. So this little white rock, see about right there. Like I said, that's about the size of a groundhog, maybe a little smaller. And with the 50 grain SX bullets, with this zero, I can hit it every time. And there's a very slight difference in the zero of these two. This one, the 55 grain's a little bit low and a tiny bit left, but let's just see if I can hit it at all. I believe that did it. Yeah. Let's see what this does. Yes, sir. I believe that's going to make a coyote load. Like I said, on this, I've got my hands. I mean, I'm shooting like under field conditions, just with some sort of a rest. See if we can make it 3 for 3. Think so. Yeah. Go up there and get that target and bring it back in. Take a look at it. Okay, so I'll go up and get the target. And what I got here, that's a 1/2 inch group. That's with the 50 grain Hornady SX with 26.2 grains of this CFE 223 and a Remington 700 222. So I mean that is plenty acceptable accuracy for this rifle. I mean that's good accuracy. That's good varmint accuracy. But come down here. Here's a group half that size. That's a 1/4 inch group. Here we got a 1/2 inch group. And here we got a 1/4 inch group. And that's with 55 grain Sierra with 25.9 grains of this CFE 223. Both are maximum loads according to my book. And the gun seems to like maximum loads. There's no signs of any pressure or anything else. But these are 2 great loads, 2 good loads. And they certainly rival my old 4198 load. I mean, that's I'm glad to say that's good accuracy. So, my goodness, I am quite pleased with these 2 groups right here. Let me back up here a little bit so you can see them. I mean, I am quite pleased with both those groups. That's good accuracy. So the simple fact of the matter is, I'm quite pleased with the accuracy of both those loads. So I think I am definitely going to load up box of around 50 or so of those for keeping for coyote loads around here with that 55 grain bullet. The 50 grain is fantastic on prairie dogs. But for a big coyote, that SX bullet may be just a tiny bit light, even though I've certainly taken coyotes with it. But I'm going to have some designated coyote loads in that thing with that 55 grain. And the beauty of it is I can use the same zero, the exact same zero with the 50 grain SX and the 55 grain Sierra, same. I mean, that's great. So I've got loads, prairie dog loads, I've got frangible bullets, you know, the SX bullet, and I've got the little bit tougher 55 grain bullet. So I'm going to have them both, and they'll both utilize the same zero. So am I happy with results using this little Remington 700 222? Boy, you better believe it. I love the 222. And that CFX 223 is so far is giving great performance in it. Great performance. You couldn't ask for much more. So when it comes to the CFE 223 in the 222, it's a definite thumbs up for me. Definite thumbs up. Like I said, the only thing is, if I was going to go prairie dog shooting and I was going to use that CFE 223, I would make sure I kept it cool. Actually, it's a good idea for any ammo to try to keep the ammo at roughly the same temperature it is when you worked up the load. So here in the mountains of southwest Virginia, then can be quite different to that hot prairie sun. Oh goodness, that prairie sun can really cause your loads to get hot, particularly with a powder that is temperature sensitive, and most ball powders tend to be that way, and definitely the H414 was. So if I was going to use this as prairie dog with CFE, I would make sure I kept my ammo cool. But if I actually go back prairie dog hunting again, I'll probably use 4198 load in it. It's nowhere near as temperature sensitive, and it's quite accurate, just about as accurate as this one. There's not much difference at all in it. But 4198, being extruded powder, it takes a little bit more to load it. It's a little bit of a pain to load. But this CFE 223, I mean, it meters precisely. Oh my! I can jockey around that meter. I can get it precise and load. I throw charge after charge after charge after charge, and they're right dead on the money. So that is another great plus for the CFE 223. So, will I give, what kind of marks would I give the CFE 223? Well, in this Remington 700 222, it's marked right at the top of the chart. It's about as good as you're going to get. I really like this stuff. I really like it in this 222. So we're going to move on to a test in the 22-250 pretty soon. But for right now, I'm a happy camper with the combination of this CFE 223 powder with the Hornady 50 grain SX bullet in this Remington 222, Remington 700 222, and the Sierra 55 grain spire point. Excellent accuracy from both of them. So right now, it'll be on to working up with the 22-250. So I'll go back in the house and get started on that little project, and we'll talk soon.